On the night of March 13th, 1997, something was seen in the skies over Phoenix, Arizona. But what? Did eyewitnesses catch a glimpse of the military's latest secret weapon? Or are UFOs to blame for these strange sightings? What was the huge V-shaped object looming above them and moving toward them swiftly and silently? Was it the Hale-Bopp comet everyone was talking about? Or was there something else, something much closer and far more frightening? Was this an alien spaceship? Or is the U.S. military somehow responsible for these unexplained sightings? Could this be the most dramatic UFO sighting in modern history? Did the government accidentally give the world a peek at its latest aeronautical wizardry? Trying to break through the veil of secrecy and obscuration that has surrounded this event has proven to be a tough job, but it brings up a question that keeps recurring. Why is the government doing its best to keep you from finding out the truth about strange objects that seem to fill the skies? On the night of March 13th, 1997, a V-shaped line of lights that some witnesses claim were attached to an object of truly gigantic proportions invaded the skies over Phoenix, Arizona. From that day to this, the official explanation to hundreds of eyewitness accounts has been silence, ridicule, or good old-fashioned government stonewalling. Nevertheless, we'll attempt to illuminate the mystery behind this astonishing story in just a moment. Arizona, the Grand Canyon state, is known the world over for its incredible desert scenery. But since the night of March 13, 1997, it's become famous for something entirely different: UFOs. Strange lights were spotted that night in Nevada, Arizona, and even New Mexico. But the most dramatic sightings were concentrated in the Phoenix area, where amber-colored lights and a huge V-shaped craft hovered over the city as hundreds of people looked on. Concerned residents put in calls to every government official they could think of in search of an explanation.
At the time of the Phoenix Lights incident, I was on the Phoenix City Council. I had no idea anything unusual had taken place until I met a reporter who asked me what had happened and if anybody was investigating. I was on my way into a televised Phoenix City Council meeting, and I told her I would ask about it. Nobody is doing any investigation on it, and I'd just like to know if anybody has any information from the city and if the city is checking into it. Apparently, when I asked my fellow council members if anything was being done to investigate the matter, all I got was silence. It was as if I hadn't asked the question at all. They just ignored me and moved on to the next councilman. People are starting to ask more questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Siebert.
I was just going to give the number.
But this was obviously different.
Why would city council members choose to ignore something that was causing such a fervor? But if the city council wasn't interested, there were others who were. The owner of a local high-tech computer lab took it upon himself to investigate the stories. Using information from eyewitness accounts, Jim Dilatoso reconstructed the unusual events of March 13th with computer animation.
I've been doing UFO research a long time, in fact over 20 years, and in that time most of the cases I've been able to identify as some natural phenomenon, and in fact I've even found some hoaxes. But the Phoenix Lights were something very different. Hundreds and hundreds of witnesses, multiple videotapes that we could test, and then with all of the witness reports be able to do a recreation. The lights were first sighted at 8:16 p.m. when the first report went into the National UFO Reporting Center from a former police officer who spotted a very unusual formation of orbs near Paulden, Arizona, in the northwestern part of the state. Within just a few minutes, 50 miles away in Prescott, Arizona, hundreds of witnesses now reported a formation of lights.
After cutting an aerial path through the Prescott Valley, the craft moved on toward the heavily populated city of Phoenix and reportedly put on quite a show. According to eyewitnesses, the enormous triangular-shaped object hovered over one of the city's major intersections for a full 5 minutes. It then moved into the airspace of the major international airport in Phoenix, where it was witnessed by professional air traffic controllers and pilots alike. And that brought up something else that was very odd about this object.
At Sky Harbor Airport, a commercial pilot was getting ready to take off when he radioed the tower and asked what this huge thing was over him. The flight controllers could see it, but they couldn't get it on radar.
Later, the strange lights made their way out of the Phoenix area and headed southeast toward Tucson.
One family reported seeing the lights as they drove from Tucson into Phoenix. The object above them was so large that it took a full 2 minutes for them to drive underneath, and that was at a freeway speed of between 65 and 75 miles per hour.
I personally interviewed over 300 witnesses. Now, these witnesses are professional, reliable people, doctors, lawyers, and ordinary citizens. Not the kind of people looking for 15 minutes of fame, but people who wanted to know what this was. So first I find out what it isn't, airplane lights, hail-bop, and then try to determine if it's an advanced military aircraft project or possibly something not from this world.
What was it that hundreds of reputable, professional, and thoroughly sober people saw in the dark desert skies over Phoenix? In spite of being scoffed at by city officials, Councilwoman Frances Barwood continued her investigation. But would perseverance lead her to the truth or land her in the middle of a government cover-up?
Being stonewalled by the city council only made me more curious, and I decided to dig deeper. Apparently, the city manager's office did respond with a memo dated May 16, 1997, but I didn't receive it until August of '97. The memo said, a check of police department reports show that there were fewer than 5 citizen calls about these lights. Since the city does not have resources or expertise to investigate the source of lights, such as those that were reported, we depend on the United States Air Force to investigate all such matters. I knew I was being lied to when I was shown a video of a TV interview with the spokesperson for the Phoenix Police Department, where they said they were overwhelmed with phone calls at the police department about the lights. I knew I had to find out what was really going on.
Barwood contacted Arizona Senator John McCain and asked him to give the matter some official notice. But once again, she got the cold shoulder.
Up until then, Senator McCain and I had a pretty good relationship, but I think his people got a little upset when I kept pushing for action. He finally did send a letter to the National Archives where he said a constituent saw something in the sky. There was no mention that I was an elected official, that there were hundreds of witnesses, and no call for action. I was stunned.
Why did government officials at every level refuse to get involved in an investigation of the Phoenix lights? Could it be that the mysterious lights were extraterrestrial in origin? Or are there eyewitness statements that support a more earthly conclusion?
There were witnesses who did see planes in the sky over Phoenix on March 13th, 1997, maybe military, maybe not. In fact, there was one witness who said that he did see planes through his telescope. I don't doubt that people saw planes. They did see planes, probably the ones that were sent out from Luke Air Force Base to investigate the phenomena.
We talked to witnesses who were close on the ground by the runway, who saw these jets scrambling, taking off, afterburners going, pursuing the orbs that were up above the Air Force Base.
Is that the answer? Can the Phoenix Lights be attributed to a group of military aircraft, possibly F-15s or F-16s from the nearby Luke Air Force Base?
We have a report that the U.S. military was placed on a defense condition alert that night, a DEFCON 3, in response possibly to the events over Phoenix.
Based on the testimony of a key eyewitness, military jets were in the air that night. But some investigators say it wasn't just for a routine training mission. They were, in fact, out to intercept a huge UFO.
Here at the National UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, we took dozens of calls that night about the strange lights over Phoenix. One of the later reports came from a gentleman who was a truck driver hauling a load of freight in the vicinity of Luke Air Force Base. The truck driver watched the lights for 20 minutes as he made his way towards the outskirts of Phoenix. When he stopped to make his drop-off, he could clearly see two orbs of light shaped like hot air balloons. They were only a couple of miles away from him, near the runway at Luke Air Force Base. At that moment, he saw three jets take off on full afterburner. As they passed directly overhead, they banked sharply and appeared to fly directly towards one of the two objects in the night sky above Phoenix.
The truck driver's report was verified by several witnesses. One woman that I spoke to, who lives right near the Air Force Base, said she saw 3 or 4 jets being scrambled that night, and she had never seen that before. Another witness saw a giant triangular-shaped object hovering near a small commuter airport in northwest Phoenix. He, too, saw military jets approaching the unidentified object. One of the jets flew up under the craft and had to veer away at the last moment to avoid a mid-air collision.
One of the more dramatic calls we took that night was from a gentleman who identified himself as an airman at Luke Air Force Base who had actually been on the tarmac that night. He reported that one of the two pilots had been so badly shaken by the intercept that he had to